Hi, everyone. My name is Angela, and we are going to go on a little bit of an adventure together this morning. We're going to check out some common tree species that you'll find in North Carolina, and I'll give you some pointers and ideas on how to identify different common trees that you're going to see all around you when you go outside. But before we talk about specific types of trees that we're going to look at today, I want to talk about some of the benefits of trees. For me personally, trees are probably my favorite living organism on the planet. They're just really cool and they do all sorts of cool things for us. They're really the planet's lungs and filters. So trees clean our air by filtering out particles. They also produce oxygen for us to breathe, which is really important. We want that O2 so that we can breathe. Trees also filter the water we drink. Their large root systems will suck water up into the tree, and then they'll release the water as water vapor through their leaves in a process called transpiration. And what that does is it really filters the water. It's pure water vapor when it comes out of the tree. And trees are also really great for shade. They keep us cool by providing shade. And even in cities where there's a lot of concrete and a lot of buildings, they tend to be hotter because of all of the concrete and the pavement and the buildings. And the more trees that you have in your city, the lower that temperature is going to be because they help keep you cool. So those are just some of the cool things that trees do. There are all kinds of different types of trees in the world, but the two broadest categories that you can break trees down into are evergreen trees, on the one which is what you see on the left side of your screen here, or deciduous trees, or they're also known as broadleaf trees here on the right side of your screen. So coniferous or evergreen trees, they're going to be the trees that have needles on them. They produce some type of cone and they stay green all year long, which means they're pretty much losing their needles or losing their needle-like thing all throughout the year. Whereas deciduous or broadleaf trees, again, what you see on the right side of your screen here, those are those trees that lose their leaves in the fall. So they're the ones that cause all of the bright, beautiful colors. They lose their leaves, they don't have leaves on during the winter, and then they grow them back in the spring. So those are the two broadest categories of types of trees that you can look at. Today, we're going to be talking about deciduous or broadleaf trees, those trees that turn really beautiful colors in the winter or in the fall and drop their leaves in the winter. So one thing, there are a lot of different ways that you can identify trees. You can look at bark on trees. All different types of tree species have unique bark. You can look at the different types of flowers or fruit that a tree produces. That will also give you information to be able to identify specific species. But probably the most common way, especially when you're identifying deciduous trees, is to look at the leaves themselves and check out the shape and different characteristics of that leaf. So here are a few things that we're going to be looking at today. Down in the bottom left corner, there are a bunch of different types of leaf shapes. So they can be smooth, they can be wavy, they can have lobes, which is what you see on the far right. And then they can also be serrated or have a really sharp edge along the outside of the leaf. And that's going to be really important for some of the species we're going to look at today. Another thing to take into consideration when you're looking at leaves is the actual shape of it, which is what you see on the upper right-hand corner here. You can have a generally circular shape, so that would have not very many lobes on it, would be circular. You can have a heart-shaped leaf, which is really neat, and often the stem of a heart-shaped leaf, excuse me, is going to be right there at the bottom, so it looks like a heart that's turned upside down. And then all the different other types of leaf shapes that you can see here, where they're like an oval or they're like a triangle. Sometimes you find them in diamonds, many different shapes of leaves, but these are the general categories that we're going to look at. And then finally, last but not least, In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see two examples of twigs with leaves on them. The one that's on the left side is what we call alternate leaves. So you've got the twig in the middle, and you'll see the leaves are offset from each other. They've got a little bit of space in between them. About, in this picture, it looks about maybe just an inch or so, maybe a little less than that. They've got space in between them, and we call those alternating leaves. If you look at the one on the right, the twig on the right, again, you can see that the leaves are coming out of the same spot on that twig. They're not alternating, but they're opposite from each other. They're coming out in the same spot on the twig. And that's another way to categorize trees, types of trees, and their leaves. So that's all going to be really important for information for us to use when we're looking at different tree species this morning. All right, so let's get into it then. I've picked out 5 different very common tree species that you are going to see in North Carolina. And we'll start right here with this star-shaped one. Let's go in. So here's some characteristics of this leaf, and I want you to type in the comments what you think this leaf is or what tree this leaf comes from. And a couple of things, we just learned about serrated edges. So if you look along the edges of this leaf, you'll see that it's bumped or ridged. It's serrated. It's got those pointy little spikes along the edges of the leaves here. This is also, this leaf has a lot of lobes. It actually has 5 lobes on it that create a star shape. That's very distinct for this specific type of tree. And then probably the thing that people know the most about this tree is it produces a spiky round ball that really hurts. If you're running around outside and you're barefoot and you step on it, it does not feel good when you step on it. It's a spiky ball. So type in the comments, tell us what you think this is. I'll give you just a second to make some guesses around what kind of tree this is. All right, and then let's find out what it is. So this leaf is from a sweet gum tree, and here are the spiky fruit that I was just talking about. I'm sure you've all seen this out on the ground. Again, these don't feel so great when you step on them. Sweet gum trees are one of the most common tree species in the southeastern US. They're very common in North Carolina. You can see in this picture on the bottom left-hand side is the seeds. They live in this spiky ball and they fall out when they're ready to start their process of becoming a sweet gum tree. And those little seeds provide a lot of food for things like birds like finches, squirrels, and chipmunks. And sweet gums are also one of the most important commercial species of trees. And what that means is that we do things like make furniture with these trees or make plywood. This tree is used a lot in plywood and furniture production. All right, the next one that we are going to look at is this leaf. So again, go ahead and type in the comments what you think this is, what tree you think this comes from. Looking at this leaf, it looks quite different from the leaf that we just looked at. It is lobed also, but you'll see that the lobes are much gentler. This is one of those leaves that has that circular, overall circular shape to it. And the edges here are really smooth. You don't see any of those little bumps or ridges where the serrations are. And a really big key to what kind of tree species this is from, the leaf is actually in the shape of a tulip. So again, tell us in the comments what tree you think this leaf is from. We'll give you just a second. All right, let's find out what it is. This leaf comes from a yellow poplar. Yellow poplars are also known as tulip poplars, again, because that leaf shape, it looks like a tulip. If you were going to sit down and draw the shape of a tulip, you might draw something that looks really similar to the shape of these leaves. These are really neat trees. They're the tallest species in eastern forests. They grow really, really tall, pretty quickly, relatively quickly. They produce this yellow and orange flower that you can see here. It has a lot of nectar in it for pollinators, things like bees and hummingbirds. It's one of the tallest species because it grows pretty quickly, and it likes a lot of sunshine. So it wants to get up above other trees pretty quickly so it can get all of that sun. And it's a primary successor. And what I mean by that is, let's say you had a field that's been farmed for many generations, and you've decided, we're not going to farm this anymore. We're just going to let it grow and see what happens. Well, that field's going to start growing plants on it. And because it doesn't have anything on it right now, it's got a lot of open space. There's not much shade at all. It gets a lot of sun. And so tulip poplars or yellow poplars are going to be one of the main tree species, along with pines, that you would see grow in the first 50 to 150 years of that field laying fallow, or not growing crops, but growing trees. And the reason that is because this is a fast growing tree and it loves sunshine. It doesn't like shade at all. And so it really wants to get as much sun as it can. And the purpose of it in that first 50 to 150 years is it provides shade for other trees like oaks and maples that do like the shade, that need shade to grow when they're first growing. So that's what we mean when we say it's a primary successor. It's one of the first species you're going to see grow in an ecosystem. For that same reason, this tree also does something else really neat that you don't see often in the tree world, and that is it self-prunes. It loves sunshine so much that when it gets big enough that its lower limbs stop getting all of the sunshine, they get shaded out by the top of the tree or the larger limbs further up the tree. It'll actually cut off resources to that limb. It'll stop giving it food and water, and it will die and fall off. It no longer needs those leaves, which are in the shade, to be healthy and happy and grow. So that's a really neat aspect of this tree as well. Okay, next tree. We're going to go down here. So some characteristics of this leaf, and again, type in the comments if you think you know what tree this comes from. This is a really great example of serrated edges. You can very distinctly see the bumps and ridges along the edges of this leaf. Again, this is one of those leaves that has that generally circular shape, but it does have these V's here that separate the lobes of the leaf. This leaf or this tree is really beautiful in the fall, and it can range in color from yellow to orange to bright scarlet red. So what do you think this is? What kind of tree is this? All right, this leaf is from a red maple tree, which is, again, one of the most common tree species that you're gonna see in the eastern and central US. Now, maples, there are a lot of different species of maples. This is a red maple that we're looking at here, and that's what you're gonna find commonly in North Carolina. But maple trees in general are most often native to Asia. And there's actually only one species of maple that you will even find in the southern hemisphere, so below the equator, in places like South America. Why do you think that is? Type in the comments here. Why do you think you might only find one species of maple in the southern hemisphere? And if you guessed that it's because they like cooler weather, that is correct. Maples in general like cooler weather, and so that's why you find them in the northern hemisphere or above the equator. Maple trees are really the ones that are responsible for the most brilliant colors that you're going to see in fall forest. In addition, excuse me, to red maples, you'll find yellow maples, sugar maples, which are found more commonly up north in the northern United States, and then into Canada as well. They turn a really bright, brilliant orange in the fall and are beautiful. They're also used to make maple syrup. They have a naturally high in sugar syrup, or sap, excuse me, that comes out of the tree. And we take that sap and we boil it down and concentrate it down to make maple syrup, which is another really cool thing that trees give us. All right. So we're going to check out this leaf now. And this is a really unique leaf. And one thing that I will point out is this long lobe at the top that sticks out of it, almost like a finger. This is a very distinct characteristic of this specific tree. So check that out, this long lobe at the top. That's gonna be a dead giveaway for what type of tree this is when you see it outside. Another specific feature of this, which is just kind of hard to see in the picture, but each of these lobes comes to a sharp point and actually has a little spike on the end of it. It's not sharp, it won't hurt you, but it is a little spike, and that is very distinct about this specific type of leaf and tree species. Squirrels also love to eat this tree's fruit. So tell us what you think it is. Put it in the comments. What kind of tree is this leaf from? All right, if you said oak tree, you are correct. And like maples, there are many different types of oak species. And this is a southern red oak in particular. And so remember how I told you about that lobe that was sticking up? We'll go back and look at that. This lobe up here that looks like a finger, and then these little spikes on the tips of the lobes tells you that this is a red oak. And that lobe that sticks up at the top, that finger that points up, that tells you that's a southern red oak. All oak trees produce tannic acid, and it's something that they store in their acorns, and it tastes bitter, and it helps protect the tree from predators. And we'll come back to that in just a minute. But North America, again, this is really common. North America contains the largest number of oak species in the world. Oaks are very, very common in North America. And actually, if you are from Raleigh or the Raleigh area, you will know that the capital city of our state is called the City of Oaks. And that is because there are so many oak trees in the city and in this area. They're very common. All right, and then finally, last but not least, we'll check out leaf number 5 here. And now we're back to smooth edges. You can see on this, there are no serrations. All of these lobes and edges are very smooth. And that's another characteristic of this leaf, is it has a lot of lobes. And not any one particular lobe is longer or bigger than the others. They're all about the same size. We've already seen a tree in this from this species. This is just a specific kind, another specific kind of species. So tell us, what is it? What do you think? What type of tree do you think this leaf comes from? All right, and if you guessed an oak tree, you're right again. This is a white oak tree. And squirrels love white oak acorns even more than they love red oak acorns. And that's because, remember how we talked about tannic acid, that all oak trees produce tannic acid that they store in their acorns. Well, white oaks don't produce as much tannic acid as red oaks do. And what that means is that their acorns are yummier to squirrels. They don't taste quite as bitter. So squirrels, when they are storing up nuts for the winter, that's how they make sure that they've got enough food to make it through the winter. They're gonna store more white oak acorns than they will red oak acorns. And squirrels and trees have a really cool, mutually beneficial relationship. So trees are going to provide habitat for squirrels to build their nests. They live and sleep in trees. And then they also provide food. The acorns from oak trees in particular are one type of nut or fruit that a squirrel is going to store up and eat over the winter. But what's really cool about this, and the benefit to the tree from the squirrel, is you'll see in this picture right here, this squirrel's taken an acorn and he is about to bury that acorn in the ground. Squirrels will store acorns in trees, but they will also bury them all over the place in the ground. And they will come back when they want to eat that acorn in the winter, but they don't remember every place that they've buried an acorn. So what that means is that they don't eat all of them. So essentially you have squirrels out there planting thousands of trees every fall. They're helping to disperse those acorns. The acorn is what the new tree grows up out of. So not only are they storing their food for the winter, but they're planting new trees, which is, I think, super cool. Think about all those squirrels that are creating new forests out there every fall. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for your time. These are just 5 of some of the most common tree species that you're going to see in North Carolina. I encourage you to get out there with your family, get outside with your parents, and go on a scavenger hunt. See if you can find these trees out there. They all have a pretty distinct leaf shape. And so use what you've just learned and get out there and go find those trees in your backyard or in your neighborhood. These trees you're going to find everywhere, all across North Carolina. So be safe out there, and we hope you have fun. Thanks for joining us for this presentation about common trees in North Carolina.